We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Tuesday. A little tired tonight. You can see it in my eyes a little bit. Just got off the plane a couple of hours ago, but coming back from Vegas, had a great time. It was a whirlwind tour in Vegas. But I get home at about 11:30. I'm now doing this at 12:30 on Tuesday morning, as I normally do, but I don't normally come home off a plane after moving around all day. So I'm not up to snuff necessarily, but I had a good weekend. I did a lot of stuff. We flew to Vegas. We saw Nick Swardson, who's a Minnesota homie. He had a show at the Venetian. We saw that. We were interested in that. My wife and I have met Nick Swardson before. We don't know him, but he is a local guy, and it was kind of fun to go see him. We watched the Vikings game, which sucked, really sucked, but we had a better situation. We didn't pay the money to go in the games. We went to a place called the Stadium Swim, as you may have seen from the TikToks. It's a cool place. It's at Circa. It's on the roof, it's on the roof. And there's pools and there's big screens and there's all kinds of food and drink. And it was outstanding. One of my nephew's friends who was with him had won big in gambling, and he decided to buy a table. And my brother and I and my nephew and my wife and his friend, we all sat there, drank and ate and had a great time watching a shitty football game. So that was good. That was good. Later, we went to the Sphere. That was interesting. Sphere's kind of a cool place. It's like one of those Omnimaxes, but it's bigger. And it was a pretty impressive show. The stadium seating is a little steep for my taste. You know, I'm old here. I don't like climbing up steep fucking things, especially with a cold. Soon as I start walking and it's cold outside, I start coughing again. I'm better than I was, but it's still kind of there. It's not as bad, but it's still kind of there. I'm going to call the doctor and see if I can get some more antibiotics and see if we can finally kick it out completely. But yesterday afternoon was probably the best part of the whole trip. My wife and I had the opportunity to have lunch with Old Soul. Now, Old Soul was on yesterday's podcast. We recorded it on Thursday or Friday, and but she was on today on the podcast. She is, well, I tell you this, I knew what Old Soul was all about, and you do too, because all of you folks love her. And she seemed like a very nice, very articulate, very intelligent, very compassionate woman. And I got to tell you, after meeting her in person, she was every bit of that, if not better. She's a wonderful lady. We had a great time. We had lunch. My wife got to meet her. She loves Old Soul now too. And very thoughtful woman. And when we got there, she gave us this gift bag with books and stuff for my granddaughter. That was incredibly thoughtful. Not necessary, but incredibly thoughtful. And I appreciate that. So, and I was talking to Old Soul. My wife said, we should have Old Soul on more often. I said, I'd be happy to do that anytime. I said, hell, she could be on every week like Ed. And she said, yeah, I might do that. Okay, fuck it. We'll have Old Soul on once a week if we can work that out, if she agrees to it. So anyway, had a great time. Happy to be back, sitting in my chair and doing what we do. And we've got a lot of stuff to talk about. I got a bunch of emails. I had 2 shows without emails, so I got some backed up. Hopefully I won't cough as much as I have in the past, but that's not saying I won't. I'll do my best. All right, the first email goes like this. Mike, it strikes me that the GQP aren't worried about indictments or convictions leading to the greatest landslide loss that the party has ever known, because they are in a position to steal the Oval Office through assassination. Wow, that accelerated quickly. These are the ones who brought a working gallows onto the campus on the day of January 6, 2021. I see where you're going with that. Wearing T-shirts specially made to boast of intent to start a civil war. On that day, since then, Mr. X has been desperately trying to recruit lone wolf assassins through his interviews, rallies, and social media posts. Mike Johnson needs to be removed from the line of succession now. These guys are looking way too confident, and they embrace the autocratic assassins of the world who got their positions or hold their power through assassinations of their detractors. I know we aren't supposed to mention these things, but there is an elephant in the room, and it's wearing an executioner's hood, Todd. Yeah, in polite company, probably not the best thing to bring up, but this is my fucking podcast, so whatever. No, I understand what you're saying. That's something you have to consider when you're dealing with the volatility of the Republican Party. I'm really not worried about that, though. I mean, you have to understand the Republicans and the Trump-fucks were at the peak of their power on January 6th. They've lost a lot since then. We've seen Donald Trump trying to get people to come out to his indictments and such, and nobody shows. You got to remember, a great portion of the violent folks that are Trump-fucks are in jail or serving some kind of sentence. Secondly, the rest of them are paranoid. They think that if they do something, it's going to be a trap and they're going to go to jail. Well, it's not a trap, but they will go to jail because they're fucking dummies. So I'm not so sure about that. In terms of violence and that nature, I'm more concerned with, excuse me, if people start feeling like Donald Trump isn't held accountable and that he might actually go back into the presidency. That's the thing that's going to strike a lot of fear in a lot of people, and I'm not sure how they react to that. So I understand your point. You have to consider this too. We've seen what the Trump-fucks do, and we see how they try to pull things off, and they fail every time. They're incompetent. They're inept. They're the fucking apple dumpling gang. I don't really worry about them too much because I don't think they have the wherewithal to pull anything off. They can't come together. The Republicans in the House of Representatives alone can't come together with anything fucking unified. So, it's always something to consider. And hopefully they're careful about it, both sides. I don't want to see any kind of activity like that, either on the Republican or the Democratic side. But in this day and age and with what's going on, I understand you got to be cautious about it. You got to think about it. All right. The next email says, "Hello, Mike. Hope you are well. I'm getting better. And the visit with Old Soul is going great." It did. It went fantastic. I got a Republican survey in the Post. Is this what goes into their polling? If so, big house here. Here I come, on account that they are so big on denying the facts. I filled it up, not out, with my comments. I checked the 3 boxes on each line. Yes, no, no opinion. But I actually put my opinion on every question, and there wasn't enough room. However, I'm afraid to mail it back. I'm sure they'll come after me. Sometimes I react by emotion rather than sleeping on it, then respond. Also, I'm pretty sure that when the check doesn't fall out of the envelope and the credit card info is still blank, they'll toss it on site. I look forward to hearing the podcast with Old Soul. I have been shielding myself from the media. I've had enough of what is going on. And if it is just a vote next year that will fix it, then I will keep it to a minimum till then. I'm sure if DJT gets his justice, well, pretty sure not the kind he's looking forward to, I can rest easy, but I'm tired of the circus. Keep up the good work and tell Junie good job on keeping you fit. Listener, Marcy. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, Junie runs me around. We're hearing that around the Christmas break, we might have to be babysitting. And she is a pistol. And Old Soul, thank you for mentioning that. She does a great job on the show. You know what's funny about Old Soul? As smart as she is, as articulate and compassionate as she is, she's not on any social media. The only reason she's on this show is because she happens to watch YouTube. And she became a viewer of the show on YouTube, which I didn't start till much later. And then she started interacting. I had her on the show, and here we are. So if you're a fan of Old Soul, you can only get her here. She doesn't want anything to do with the other social media. Interesting. because if anybody would be good at it, it would be her. All right, next one. Hey, Mike, I emailed you a while back saying I didn't want anything to happen to the orange douche until he got what he had coming to him. I'm starting to rethink that position. MAGA politicians are doing their best to ignore the Constitution in order to help him get elected. The number one Spanish-speaking television station has done a complete 180 and is now supporting him thanks to the Kushner piece of shit. That can potentially sway a lot of Spanish-speaking voters. I'm getting very uncomfortable about the climate we're in. At this point, I wish the motherfucker would just mercifully die. I would actually consider doing it myself if I were in a younger man's body. Nah, that's going a little over the edge. I don't think you mean that. I would even, at the cost of my own existence, it would be worth to rid the world of him. Sadly, Paul. Paul, I don't think you have to get that crazy about it. Things will fall into place. Things will happen. Now, Donald Trump's not the healthiest guy emotionally or physically. I don't know what the future holds for him, but he's going to be 78 years old. Guys like that don't last to 90. So who knows what's going to happen ultimately. But I don't think you have to worry about him becoming president or anything. Like I say, I see the Republicans and the Trumplefucks really losing power more than anything these days. And I think that we're going to be okay. I really do. I think that we're not going to have to deal with fascism in 2024. I really think we're at a turning point. I kind of get the sense of that. You know, we've gone through some rough times and some bad shit, but things are now going the other way. And as they do, I think finally we'll find our way out of this. And I say that because, you know, every other time in history that we've had bad times or troubled times, we've always come out of it. So why wouldn't that be the case here? It looks like we're headed the right direction. We've always done it before. Logic would tell you we're going to be fine. All right. Next one comes from Gordy. He says, "Morning, Mike. I just got to say, I hope you didn't go to the football game while in Vegas. Holy shit. Are both teams that bad?" Yep. Anyway, I wanted to ask you what you thought of the interview on CBS Sunday Morning with the weakest speaker, Mike Milquetoast McCarthy. No, it's Mike Johnson. Or maybe you meant Milquetoast McCarthy. I about threw up listening to him. What's your take on it? Glad you're back. Hope your trip was great. Sent from my iPhone, Gordy. I actually didn't see the interview. I kind of heard bits and pieces of it. I think anything Mike Johnson says, he's a lot like Donald Trump. He puts his foot in his mouth all the time. He's not doing himself any good. I think he's, you know, as much as he's bad in this evangelical bullshit, I think he's incredibly weak. I think Joe Biden will twist him up like a pretzel and do whatever the fuck he wants with him. The fact of the matter is they aren't going to accomplish much for the remainder of the year anyway. They've got a smaller majority. They will have to come to some budget decision or at least a continuing resolution for a time. Ultimately, they'll have to come up with a budget, and he's just too weak to really worry about him. Yes, he says some crazy shit, but the more crazy shit he says, the better off for the Democrats. I mean, that's the one thing. I heard an interview, and I can't remember who it was with. They were talking about the abortion issue, and whoever was talking, God, I can't remember. I'm sorry, I'm really tired. But this person was talking to Jake Tapper, and he was talking about the special addendums to abortion. You know, if it meant the woman's life or something wrong with the baby, there were options to the abortion thing. And Jake pointed out, no, they're not. I can give you a list of the states that don't do that. And the guy just got flummoxed and kind of shut up. The thing is, everything for the Republicans is going badly right now, very badly. Nothing is working. They got no positives. There's nothing they're doing that they're getting support for. So I think what we need to do is just keep them on the run and bury the motherfuckers until they're done. We've got them right where we want them. Now we just need to keep running them down and make sure that they don't come back like this fucking cold. It's all I need is for that fucker to come back hard like it did earlier. All right. Next one comes from John. He says, "Season's greetings, Mike. I enjoy your podcast, and you are like the new Walter," it says contract. I think he meant Cronkite, "because you tell it like it is. You become my source of news and information because you tell it in layman's terms so I can get a clear understanding of what's going on in the world. And I truly thank you and your special guests like Ed and Old Soul. Thank you again for all you do, John. Thank you." You know, that's one of the things I learned early on when I got into broadcasting. I was never a big fan of Howard Cosell. And one of the reasons I wasn't a fan of Howard Cosell is because of the way he talked. He talked over everybody's head. And when I went into broadcasting, they told us very specifically, if you're going to be able to be a communicator, you got to communicate. And the only way you can communicate is if people understand what the fuck you're saying, or boil it down into simple terms. And I don't mean simple like people are stupid, but boil it down into terms that people can understand. Everything you see in the media is so convoluted and so bullshit. They're trying to play games and they're trying to get you excited and upset. And that's what upsets me. So that's why I do what I do. Trust me, when I simplify things and boil it down to the bottom line, I'm doing it for me as much as you, because I need to understand what's going on. I know better than to listen to the bullshit that I hear. If I hear something, I go, well, that can't be totally right. So I dig into it and I find out what it is. And it's sad, but it seems like I'm one of the few people that provide that information. These people are more than happy to leave you ill-advised, and that's not good for you. It's not good for the country. So fuck it. We'll just boil it down and hopefully get out some real information to folks. So thank you. Next one. Hi, Boomer. What a treat having Ed and then Old Soul back to back. Thank you. Ed always teaches, and I learn about the fairness doctrine and Reagan's impact on healthcare. I'm now convinced he wasn't in the Chicago 7, but I know if he was old enough, he could have been, he would have. Definitely a possibility. Old Soul crushed me talking about Trump not being about that life. So funny. She's always shows what empathy and compassion sounds like. And even though it's often discussed, her take on the media failures in covering Trump is somehow a fresh perspective. Also, when she's describing his agendaless approach to the presidency, she's incredible. I would have to agree. You guys talk about Trump's extreme narcissism and you call him a psychopath. I really believe that the depth of his sickness and the rot in that man is beyond anything that we could ever imagine. Look at his eyes, for Christ's sake. He's missing some key human attributes. I know what you're saying. You look at him and he looks like a scared animal. And that's basically what he is. As much as he tries to talk shit and act tough, he is absolutely terrified at this point. Boomer, I hear you softening your language about Trump not being the nominee. I've got 4 dinner bets out there that he won't be. Dinners in Long Island, Philadelphia, way up to the New York State, and here in Virginia. I don't intend to lose those bets. You hear me softening my language about Trump not being a nominee? No, that's not true. I don't think he'll be a nominee. I mean, there's always the opportunity that he will, because they have no other options. Something has to happen. Something has to cause him to drop out or get kicked out. Now, I've said this before and I'll say it again. It's not just me thinking he's going to drop out. We got the remaining Koch brother and other people that are putting money into Nikki Haley. Why would they do that? Nikki Haley doesn't have a prayer at this point. They can only be assuming that Donald Trump won't be the nominee too. And I'm not saying that I'm in line with the Koch brothers or anything like that. But where there's a lot of money going into it, there's something behind it. I don't know what it is. I still don't think he'll be the nominee. But I'll just say this too. I'm not always right. I didn't think Biden would be the nominee. And I think I would have been right if Donald Trump has just disappeared. But since Donald Trump's back in the mix, I know that Joe Biden has said he feels important for him to stay in to beat Donald Trump because he feels he can do it because he's already done it. So I didn't think Joe Biden would be the nominee. I didn't think either Biden or Donald Trump would be. But Joe Biden is the nominee, at least at this point. And I don't see that changing unless something weird happens or bad happens. But Donald Trump's a different deal. He's got so much shit hanging over his head. From March till the election, he's going to be in court just about every fucking day, one way or another. When does he have time to run a campaign? This guy is going to be run around so much. I'll put it this way. I'm 63 years old. I have a cold. I'm running around Las Vegas. My nephew is running in front of us. I can't keep up with that motherfucker. I had to slow down, stop, do whatever, because he's 30, I'm 63, and I'm not in the best health right now. That's how Donald Trump is. He's not in the best health mentally or physically. He can't keep up with all that he's going to have to do. He may or may not want to drop out. He may not have a fucking choice. It may get to his health, mental or physical. The email goes on, and I don't think he will be the nominee. He won't quit, but the sum total of his legal problems plus his crazy shit he's saying and general wariness with listening to his whiny ass will cause him to lose in the primaries. I think that's a distinct possibility. And he will lose to Nikki, whose sex and heritage won't be a problem, but rather will be offered as magic holy water, cleansing the Republicans of their many sins. Keep on trucking, Boomer. Garage Door Jeff. P.S. Paul Harvey has been mentioned because of Ed. Let me recommend that any listeners too young to have heard him coming out of their parents' kitchen radios every day should check the TikTok that plays his broadcast. Even for us old birds, they are a delight to hear again. Just like Ed, they hold up in time. Yeah, Paul Harvey was cool. He did news, and he also did something called The Rest of the Story. It was always an interesting, either historical or personal story or something, and it always had a kicker at the end. It was always interesting. People love that fucking show. I told you before, I worked at a radio station that told me, do not ever miss Paul Harvey's Rest of the Story or you're fired. Now, I don't know if they really meant that, but they were that adamant about that show. And it was, it was just something that came down the network line every day at a certain time, and then you'd run it later in the day. It wasn't live or anything like that. But if you haven't heard Paul Harvey, you should check it out. He is on TikTok. Well, he's not. He's dead, but his reports are on TikTok. All right, next one. Hi, Mike. A few days ago at a campaign rally here in Iowa, Casey DeSantis said something incredibly stupid. Oh, what are the odds? She called on voters to descend on Iowa to vote in the caucuses. The Iowa GOP had to release a statement that said not to do this and remind everyone that you must be an Iowa resident to participate in the caucuses. The sheer stupidity of this statement is amazing. At one time, this would have been the end of DeSantis's run for president. Well, it's pretty much over anyway. He'd end his campaign in disgrace. Now it's just another Friday for the GOP. It seems like every day we hear more and more about criminality in the GOP. I know how the criminal GOP is, and I know the younger voters won't tolerate it. I can't wait till we don't have to deal with Republicans in government. I'm seriously wondering if Texas might flip purple or even blue in 24. With the people like AG Ken Paxton and the Texas Supreme Court, we stand a chance. This latest issue with the Texas abortion law that I think the voters there will come through. Yeah, I'm thinking that's going to have a big effect down there in Texas. Texas proved that the exceptions they laid out in their laws are meaningless. While I'm very glad the woman in question was able to travel to get an abortion, the Texas Supreme Court ruled against her. They said she wasn't sick enough to qualify. I'm hearing that now they want to look into potentially using the bounty law as well as charging any medical personnel who might have helped her get an abortion out of state. Muscles and Nursing said that because of how the licensing agreement works between states, if Texas found out the names of the medical personnel involved, they could potentially revoke those licenses for violating Texas law while not in Texas. This is sickening. And honestly, I'm not sure how that's possible. You may be right about that, but that doesn't sound right to me at all. Lastly, I saw again on CNN an article about Biden's problems getting reelected. They didn't point out that if Trump or any other Republican could flip Georgia and Michigan, it could decide the race against Biden. I don't see it happening, but it does mean we have to make sure everyone votes in favor of Biden if they don't want a Republican president. Thanks, Eric. He is our friend from Iowa. And I couldn't agree more. You know, it's funny when I watch the media talk all this shit about Donald Trump might be winning and the fascist stuff. I'm annoyed by it because it's a lie. It's just bullshit. But at the same time, you think the media may be doing this in order to scare people so they get out and vote. I mean, it certainly worked in 2020. Joe Biden had 81 million votes. Donald Trump had 74 million votes. The largest turnout for a presidential election ever. That's interesting. And so when all the Republicans turned out and all the Democrats turned out, the Democrats still won by 7 million votes, including in the Electoral College. Now, people talk about, well, they're going to cheat or do something with the system. They aren't as strong as they once were. They don't have the same power that they had back in 2020 or 2016 for that matter. You're giving them too much credit. They've taken a beating this long. People are hip to who they are. This whole thing with the overturning Roe v. Wade, that is really the death knell for the Republican Party. All this other shit almost doesn't matter. Like Eric was talking about in Texas, you know, she goes, this woman needs an abortion. The baby won't survive. She may never be able to have kids again. The court said, okay. And then they took it to the Supreme Court. A.G. Paxton, this fucking criminal that they let go, the Senate in Texas, in spite of the fact he's the most outrageous criminal I've ever heard of as an attorney general in any state. I think Eric might be right. There might be a switch going on in Texas and in other states too. Like I say, we've got the indictments, we've got the charges, we've got all the ridiculous shit that's out there. But that one thing, the overturning Roe v. Wade, is going to give the Republicans a beating. We saw what it did in 2022. And that was, you know, kind of short notice. It was before the 2022 election. People freaked out and they voted against them. They don't want the Republicans in there because the vast majority of the people believe in Roe v. Wade. 70% of the country supports it, and many of them are Republicans. Whether they like Republicans or not, they are not going to like this shit at all. And it's going to cost them a lot of votes. That's why I'm convinced that there is going to be a blue wave coming up on November of 2024. People are scared to death. And that's one thing that obviously has a big effect. We saw it in 2020. We saw it in 2022. And nobody's gotten less scared now. If anything, they've gotten more scared. They're now feeling the after effects of this Roe v. Wade reversal. And women are getting sick and women are dying and children are dying. And this hits home with a lot of folks. You know, people like me who old, where abortion really doesn't impact me personally, it still troubles me a lot. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. Anytime any party takes away a constitutional right, that is a red flag. Because if they do it once, they'll do it again and again and again and again. So we have to take note of that. I mean, even if we were talking about the Second Amendment and they just wanted to cancel the Second Amendment out, nobody gets guns. That would probably make this country a safer place. But it's a red flag too. We do not want to give away constitutional rights. Once that happens, you can expect there'll be more and more constitutional rights taken away from us. We're worried about a fascist state here in this country. And of course, with Donald Trump and other Republicans in power, that's a distinct possibility. And if you think Roe v. Wade, that constitutional right would be the last thing they'd take, well, you're mistaken. There'll be a lot that they take away. And people, whether you're Republicans or Democrats, have to recognize that, have to understand that, because we're in a dangerous situation. So I've told you all along, I'm pretty confident. I don't worry. I get a lot of people calling me or DMing me very anxious and very worried about what might happen. I really believe in my mind that we're on the right track, and it'll be fine. We're headed the right way. I know a lot of people won't buy into that until they see it firsthand. I get that. But I feel like it's almost destiny that we're going to come out of this. Nothing good is happening for the Republicans. They are losing at every turn. If they were winning now and again, I might be worried, but they keep fucking losing. Now, there's something we're going to talk about after the break that I know it has a lot of people worried, and I don't think you need to be worried, but we'll talk about it nonetheless. So we'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Got to be honest with you, I can't wait to get to bed, wake up in the morning, get back on track the way I normally do. It was tougher to do TikToks. I haven't shaved in a couple days. I forgot to bring a razor with me. I got this weak attempt at looking at like Miami Vice. It's not working. Not one that can grow a beard, so I don't typically do that. But by tomorrow, I'll be cleaned up and ready to go. It reminds me, I embarrass my wife a lot because there are times when jokes come up that I come to my mind and I just spew them out, and she's usually embarrassed by them. Um, she'll laugh about it later, but in front of people. But looking the way I do and feeling the way I do, I was sitting on the plane, and I'm a smart ass by nature. You know that. And I think everybody that knows me knows that. But people who don't know me, they don't really know what to do with it. But I'm sitting on a plane. I'm sitting on the aisle, which I like to do. And the flight attendant is going back and forth, giving out soda pop and whatever, whatever. And when that's done, she comes by with a bag to collect garbage. I feel like such an asshole for doing this, but I did it. Um, she comes up to me holding the bag, and she looks me right in the eye and she goes, "Garbage." And I said to her, I said, fair enough, but my wife says I clean up pretty good. A little judgy for my taste, but okay, you got your opinion. And she looked at me like, what the fuck are you saying? And I'm just giggling to myself because I cracked myself up. Eventually she got it, but I think she was so embarrassed at first, it really didn't play out the way it should go. But it didn't really bother me. My wife looked at me, she goes, "Did you really fucking say that?" I go, "Sadly, I did." And that's not the worst thing I say. So if you ever hear me say something like on your emails, some smart ass remark, I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not mad at you. I'm not, that's just who the fuck I am. I'm a smart ass. And I'll tell you what, being a smart ass is very cathartic. And I'll tell you why. Because when you're a smart ass and you're always joking around, you can virtually say anything to anybody and they'll just laugh it off. Like if I'm with somebody and they're being an asshole and I go, "God, you're a fucking asshole." And they'll just look at me like, "Oh, shut up. Shut up. You're a smart ass." And in my heart, I really meant that. So I got that off my chest. They don't understand I was being serious. It's a beautiful situation. It's absolutely wonderful. Anyhow, moving on. This is a story that I really wanted to talk about because I think there's a lot of people worried, and I don't think they should be worried. But, who knows in this world today? Now, we know that Jack Smith has his case against Donald Trump in D.C. regarding election interference. Tanya Chutkin is the judge presiding, and Donald Trump made an appeal saying, "Hey, I was president. I have special executive privilege. Let me off. You should dismiss the case altogether." And of course, he lost that appeal. However, he took it to the Supreme Court, as he does. We haven't heard from the Supreme Court as yet. And I think a lot of people are worried that the Supreme Court is all on board with Donald Trump and they'll let him off the hook. And I saw Hawk on TikTok, and he answered this correctly, but I don't think he was doing service to anybody by the way he did it. And I'm not talking down about Hawk. He's a cool dude. I like his stuff. I watch him all the time. He answered the question, but he kind of left it hanging after that. So I'll try to add something to it that hopefully makes people feel better. Somebody asked him, what happens if the Supreme Court sides with Donald Trump on this executive immunity or whatever the fuck it is? And correctly, why am I correcting Hawk? He's a lawyer. I didn't even graduate college, so I don't know fucking anything. But what Hawk said is, if that happens, Supreme Court agrees with Donald Trump, then the case in Washington, D.C. with Jack Smith goes away, as does the case down in Georgia. Now, that doesn't mean the other people, the co-conspirators, don't get indicted too and aren't charged. This is specifically talking about presidential immunity or executive privilege or whatever the fuck it is. Now, Donald Trump is claiming a lot of what he did on January 6th happened while he was president, so he has presidential immunity, which is bullshit. And what Hawk said was that those two cases would go away if the Supreme Court agreed with him is true. However, it's not going to happen that way. It's just not. There's no basis in law for Donald Trump's claim. The Supreme Court is got enough fucking problems. They do this, it'll turn into a fucking firestorm for them. So that's not going to happen. I think what's ultimately going to happen, there's going to be no decision by the Supreme Court. I think they'll do what they've done with a lot of Donald Trump stuff and say, yeah, that's not for us. We're not going to hear that. I believe that's what they're going to do. Now, I don't have any inside track to say that's for sure what's going to happen, but based on history, based on how they've handled other things, based on the fact there is no basis in law for this bullshit, I would presume they would do that. They don't want to get in the middle of that. And that would be the right thing for them to do. Just stay out of it because there's really no case. And let's be honest, take a look at Donald's appeals. How many appeals has he won in the last 2 years? 0. Fucking 0. So I'm not as worried about them coming back with something. However, Jack Smith did something that was interesting. I'm glad he did it. And the Supreme Court responded. And this has got to be making Donald Trump nervous because, part of the reason he makes these appeals to the Supreme Court is to delay, extend the time so he can get elected president and pardon himself. He's not going to get elected president. If that's his Hail Mary pass, he's in a world of fucking hurt. Anyway, special counsel Jack Smith on Monday asked the Supreme Court to take up the rule quickly on whether former President Donald Trump can be prosecuted on charges he plotted to overturn the 2020 election results. Smith made his request for the court to act with unusual speed to prevent any delays that could push the trial back past the 2024 presidential election. Now, later yesterday, this is kind of unprecedented. The justices indicated that they would decide quickly whether to hear the case ordering Trump's lawyers to respond by December 20th. The court's brief order did not signal what it ultimately would do, but they kind of did. They indicated that they would decide quickly whether to hear the case. Well, this whole thing with immunity could be very complex if they try to figure out a way to deal with it, to actually grant it to Donald Trump to hear it. So the idea that they're going to come up with a quick response whether or not to hear it by December 20th, and it is December 12th right now, we're talking a week. I would presume that means they're not going to take it up. Now, I don't know that for sure, but again, looking at logic and facts, that's what it would suggest. And I think they don't really have a choice anyway. Donald Trump's argument has been a loser since he started making it. Every appeals court has said he loses. I just don't see the Supreme Court going against that. And why this is trouble for Donald Trump is because he doesn't get the one thing he's really looking for is the delay. So if on December 20th, the Supreme Court says, we're not going to hear this, he's fucked. He's got no more appeals to grab. He's going to trial in March, and he'll be convicted by June, maybe. So he's fucked. And he doesn't like the idea that the Supreme Court is going to speed this up. I know a lot of people think, oh, they'll just side with Donald Trump. That's not going to happen. They've got no basis to do that. They would look incredibly stupid. And as I said, they would start a fucking firestorm. That's not something they need right now. Now, a federal judge ruled the case could go forward, but Trump said he would ask the federal appeals court in Washington to reverse the outcome. Smith is attempting to bypass the appeals court. So actually, Donald Trump did not ask the Supreme Court. He went to an appeals court just beneath the Supreme Court. So Smith is kind of doing an end around on him, saying, fuck the appeals court. I'm going right to the Supreme Court. We're not going to play this game. We're going to find out if the Supreme Court would even hear it. So he can go to the appeals court, and when they turn him down, he'll go to the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court will have already told him, you're fucked, it's too bad. So like I say, you got to trust in Jack Smith. He knows what the fuck is up. He's playing this thing perfectly. I'm not worried about it in the least. And to suggest that, oh boy, we just got to wait. We keep hearing that. All these different things that are going to happen. Oh no, we've got to wait. We turn it into drama, and we turn it into all this stuff when we sit on the edge of our seats waiting for it. And it always goes the way we expect it to go, and doesn't end up being a disaster. It's not going to change here. So Smith is attempting to bypass the appeals court, the usual next step in the process, and have the Supreme Court take up the matter directly. So he's presuming the appeals court will turn it down, just like the other appeals court did, or the other federal court did. And then instead of not worrying about them and taking another step and taking more time, which was what Donald Trump wants, he's going right to the Supreme Court. You said, would you hear this? And hurry it up. And they're fucking doing it. So that's interesting. Now, the case presents a fundamental question at the heart of our democracy, whether a former president is absolutely immune from federal prosecution for crimes committed while in office, or is constitutionally protected from federal prosecution when he has been impeached and not convicted before criminal proceedings. Here's the deal. Didn't Mitch McConnell say, well, we let him go on the impeachment, but that doesn't mean he can't be prosecuted after he's not president anymore. Mitch McConnell said that. William Barr said that, his attorney general. So I'm not worried about this. Trump's presidential campaign criticized Smith for trying to go around the appeals court. Well, of course he did, but that's the exact game that Donald Trump would play. There is absolutely no reason to rush this sham to trial except to injure President Trump and tens of millions of his supporters. President Trump will continue to fight for justice and oppose those authoritarian tactics. Don't you love the projection there? He's suggesting Jack Smith and Biden are authoritarian. Please, motherfucker. The court is next scheduled to meet privately on January 5th, 2024. It's unclear whether the justices would convene sooner to take up Smith's request, underscoring the urgency for prosecutors in securing a quick resolution that can push the case forward. Smith and his team wrote, "It is of imperative public importance that respondents' claims of immunity be resolved by the court and the respondent trial proceed as promptly as possible if his claim of immunity is rejected." At issue is the December 1 ruling from the U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan that rejected arguments by Trump's lawyers that he was immune from federal prosecution. In her order, Chutkan, who was appointed by President Barack Obama, wrote that the office of the president does not confer a lifelong get-out-of-jail-free pass. She said former presidents enjoy no special conditions on their federal criminal liability. Defendant may be subject to federal investigation, indictment, prosecution, conviction, and punishment for any criminal acts undertaken while in office. See, that's the thing. When he gets this immunity while he's in office, it's not because he's immune from the crimes. They do that because they don't want to disrupt the natural order of our government, you know? They don't want to cause problems while he's in office. But that doesn't make him immune from it while he's in office. If he commits a crime, he can be prosecuted for it after he's out of office. That's been clearly pointed out many, many times. So what he's asking for is a hope and a fucking prayer, and he's not going to get it because it's just not the way it's done. Now, if the justices get involved, they would have an opportunity to rule for the first time ever on whether ex-presidents enjoy immunity from prosecution. Justice Department policy prohibits the indictments of a sitting president, though there's no such bar against prosecutions for a former commander-in-chief. Lawyers for Trump say that he cannot be charged for actions that fell within his official duties as president. Inciting a riot, inciting an insurrection, that's not part of his regular duties. See, that's the problem. The things he's done aren't part of his regular duties. Smith's team stressed that if the court did not expedite the matter, there would not be an opportunity to consider and resolve the question in the current term. The United States recognizes that this is an extraordinary request. This is an extraordinary case, prosecutors wrote. The court should grant and set a briefing schedule that would permit this case to be argued and resolved as promptly as possible. Prosecutors are also asking the court to take up Trump's claim, also already rejected by Chutkan, that he cannot be prosecuted in court for conduct in which he was already impeached and acquitted before Congress. See, that's the stupid part of this. He's trying to say it's double jeopardy because he was acquitted in the Senate. Two totally different things. You got the judicial system and you got Congress. They're not the same thing. Whether he was acquitted in the Senate has no bearing on his legal liability. Now, Trump faces charges accusing him of working to overturn the results of the 2020 election, which he did, and also for inciting the insurrection on January 6th. He has denied any wrongdoing, of course. What do you expect out of that stupid motherfucker? Of course he did. But this is all just smoke and mirrors. This is just all a Hail Mary play by Donald Trump, and none of them have ever worked. They're not going to work this time. I really believe the best course of action for the Supreme Court is to say, yeah, we're not even going to listen to that. Because then if it does go to court, then we have to spend months and months while they go through this process. I just don't see the Supreme Court doing it. What do they have to gain from it? I mean, they know that Donald Trump is a goner one way or another. They're not worried about any retribution by Donald Trump at this point because he doesn't have any power. He will never have the power because he will not be elected in 2024. So nothing's going in Donald Trump's favor. And to worry about this, it's a little crazy, I think. But I hope the Supreme Court comes out and says, yeah, we're not going to hear this. And then Donald Trump's attempt at the appeals court is pretty much shot. And then Donald Trump's pissed because he can no longer delay. I mean, that's his game. I'm going to ask for something ridiculous, then appeal it again, and then appeal it to the Supreme Court. And I can suck up 6-8 months in the process and get closer to the election. But as I say, his only hope is to win the election and pardon himself. And first of all, he's not going to win the election. Second of all, there's no precedent for him pardoning himself. He can shut down the prosecutions. He can shut down federal prosecutions, but not state prosecutions. We still have the Manhattan District. He can't do fuck all with that. We still have Georgia, the federal. He can't do anything with that. Now, maybe the Supreme Court, if they said he was immune, maybe that affects what's going on in Georgia. But trust me, Donald Trump's got so much stuff going against him. He's going to get got. There's no question about that. He's going to get got. All right. Now, Rudy Giuliani started a trial yesterday, and this is where a jury could decide if he must pay tens of millions of dollars in damages to two Georgia election workers he repeatedly defamed. You remember this. Ruby Freeman, Shay Moss, mother and daughter, they were just doing their job on election night. And of course, Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani went out and made all these fucking ridiculous claims that they were cheating for Biden, that they were moving drugs around and all kinds of shit. And this was devastating to these two women that did nothing wrong. They were stalked, they were threatened, and they're still being stalked and threatened. So they sued Rudy Giuliani for defamation of character. He lost, much like the situation with the lawsuit for Donald Trump. He's already lost. Now it's just a matter of finding out how much he's going to pay. I'm more interested in finding out how much they'll actually get out of him, because I don't know that he's got much money left, or he won't have much money left. So Rudy's already been found liable for defaming Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss, but he will stand trial starting yesterday to determine how much he may have to pay the two Georgia election workers. Now he's going to be screaming like a stuck pig because he's going to get a heavy fine. Giuliani conceded in July that he lied about Freeman and Moss while he was acting as an attorney for Trump, saying his statements were actionable and false and an attempt to stem a crush of legal bills related to the case. That's why he gave in, because he couldn't afford the legal bills. The pair sued the lawyer in federal court in 2021, alleging Giuliani repeatedly spread conspiracy theories that had brought in illegal ballots while counting votes on 2020, as well as flash drives used to alter digital tabulation machines. It's all ridiculous bullshit. Even if they wanted to, they couldn't have done it. That's why it's so ridiculous. Now, while those claims were repeatedly proven to be lies, they quickly spread throughout the Trump orbit, with former president himself calling Freeman a professional voter scammer in a call with Georgia's Secretary of State in 2021. Now, Freeman testified last year that both she and her daughter have endured severe abuse stemming from Giuliani's falsehoods, including death threats that forced them into hiding at times. She said, "I've lost my name. I've lost my reputation," she told lawmakers. "Do you know how it feels to have the president of the United States target you?" Yeah, I can only fucking imagine. "I've lost my sense of security, all because a group of people starting with number 45 and his ally Rudy Giuliani decided to scapegoat me and my daughter Shay to push their own lies about how the presidential election was stolen." Now, attorneys for Freeman and Moss intend to ask the jury for between $15.5 million and $43 million in damages. I don't even think Rudy can afford the $15 million. The total does not include any punitive damages the jury could award. So these are actual damages. Say they say, okay, it's $40 million that you owe them. The punitive damages then come after that, and it could be another $40 million. It's going to absolutely devastate Rudy Giuliani. He is going to be done. And then over and above that, not only does he have that going on in Georgia, he's one of the three people in the Fani Willis case who's not going to get an offer to cut a deal. So he's going to go on trial in Georgia and probably go to jail. Rudy Giuliani's life financially and in terms of freedom is fucking over. It's just a matter of time when they get him. Now, jury selection began yesterday before an expected 3 days of testimony. This is going to go pretty quickly. Giuliani and the two women are set to testify as the trial continues through the week. Giuliani has faced a maelstrom of legal woes over his work to dispute the 2020 presidential election. I don't know what he's thinking. You know, here's a guy who was once a smart man, who was well thought of, and then he just fucking blows it for this dipshit Donald Trump. He's not the only one to do it. Every Republican, every Trump-fuck that follows him, pretty much destroyed their future, their career. Mike Lindell. The only thing I can think of is that they really thought they could bring enough pressure to take their bullshit through and actually succeed at it. Somebody like Rudy Giuliani had to know that this was a loser, but he just felt with Donald Trump and himself that they'd be strong enough to bowl everybody over. Well, surprise, motherfucker, it didn't work. Trump and 17 other defendants, part of the state racketeering case. Rudy's in that mix. And so it's a lot of trouble for Rudy. When this is all said and done, Rudy and Donald Trump will be destroyed financially. They will have nothing. Their reputation will be sullied. They will be a pariah in this country. And then they also risk jail. We'll see ya. Wouldn't want to be ya. And the interesting thing about Rudy is also sued by his own attorneys when they say Giuliani owes them nearly $1.4 million in unpaid legal fees. He can't even fucking pay that. Now, the judge overseeing the case issued a warning to Giuliani's team last week after he skipped court hearings she had ordered him to be at. How could you have missed that, Judge Beryl Howell asked his attorneys. It sets the tone, doesn't it, for the whole case, she added. Yeah. He's in a world of shit. Rudy's pretty much done here. He is going to be convicted in Georgia. He may even end up in the federal case as well. We know Donald Trump has been indicted, but we also know there's going to be superseding indictments where there'll be a lot more of them indicted. And he certainly could be considered to be in the thick of that. It's likely he'll get indicted in Jack Smith's case as well. I don't know how soon Jack's going to do that. The sooner the better would be for me, but he's clearly got a plan. He wants to get Donald Trump squared away because he's the one that is time sensitive. Everybody else, they don't care whether it goes past the election or not. Donald Trump, they're very focused on. They want to get him done. Once we get done with the Supreme Court, hopefully saying they won't deal with it, maybe then we'll start seeing superseding indictments. Or maybe, they'll just wait till after the trial in March before they indict any other people. I'm not sure what they're going to do there, but there's going to be other names that Jack Smith brings up regarding January 6th. Now, you remember in the lawsuit, the Letitia James lawsuit in New York, Donald Trump was going to testify. He'd already testified when the prosecution called him. Did not go well. He was hoping to get the gag order taken off before he testified. That did not happen. So now all of a sudden he backs out of testifying. And that was probably wise on his stance, because he was going to say something stupid. They might have been setting him up for a perjury trap. Yeah, of course, the defense would have thrown him softballs, but the prosecution would be all in his shit. And Donald Trump just cannot tell the truth. And he has this need to go after the judge and go after the law clerk and the judge's wife and all that stuff. He's really cutting his nose off to spite his face, because it goes back to the fact there is no jury in this trial. It's just the judge. And he's done nothing from the start of this case to now but to piss off the judge. I don't know if I'd do that to the one guy who's going to decide whether to break you financially or not. Now, Trump's last-minute decision to back out of testifying in the fraud case sparked speculation about what could have prompted him to change his mind. Forbes reporter Dan Alexander reacted to his news by posting a lengthy thread on Twitter in which he outlined the multiple perjury traps Trump faced if he had decided to go through with the testimony. And he cited his own publication's work to show questions prosecutors could have used to trip up Donald Trump. Well, it wouldn't have been hard. First, Alexander examined Trump's previous testimony on the valuation of his Trump Tower penthouse that had been listed in financial documents as having 3 times its actual square footage. Trump blamed others for getting it wrong. Alexander wrote in summing up the Trump's testimony that after Trump testified, we at Forbes released an audio clip which had not previously been made public, showing him personally lying about the square footage of his penthouse, claiming it was 3,000 square feet. He knew. And he knew, I think Donald Trump wanted to testify because he always thinks he can talk his way out of shit. I'm sure the lawyer said, listen, motherfucker, you do not testify or we're gone. That's about the only thing that could keep him from doing it. Subsequent reporting by Forbes also contradicted Trump's claims that he personally discovered the misreported penthouse valuation and personally instructed his accountant to fix it, when in reality, those accountants only fixed it after Forbes published an exposed showing that the penthouse was wildly overvalued. What's more, explained Alexander, the penthouse was far from the only instance when Trump's testimony veered wildly from reality. Yeah, he was doing this all the time. He's been doing it for fucking decades. It's not like this is a oopsie-daisy and he made a little mistake. This was the financial strategy of Donald Trump and the Trump organization and his family. This is how they made money. This is how they saved money. They enhanced the value of his properties when he was trying to get loans or insurance deals or whatever. The more valuable his properties, the better terms he would get. But then when he took it to the other side and was going to pay taxes on this shit, he said it was worth far less, so he wouldn't have to pay as much in taxes. This isn't hard. This isn't hard to see where the criminality is in this. It's very clear. It's very clear as to what he was doing, why he was doing it, and what he gained from it. Now, he'll say that nobody was hurt. Well, a lot of people were hurting as shit. If he got special terms from banks or insurance companies because he overvalued his property, there was a lot of money that they could have gotten if the terms had been more accurate than what they did. Yeah, maybe they got paid, but they didn't get paid as much. I mean, you and I walk into a car dealership and we have a $50,000 car and somehow we trick them into $40,000. Maybe there's still profit there, but did we not rip them off? They're entitled to get whatever profit they're asking for. You don't have to buy it there, but same goes for the banks. They offer special terms to people with special circumstances. If you come in and lie, say, I'm part of those special circumstances, and then you get this special terms, and then later you find out that's not the case, I got to tell you, if it were you and me, they wouldn't be so happy about it. They'd be in our shit in a fucking instant. So Donald Trump found that discretion was the better part of valor, and he chose not to testify, which was probably the best choice. Although by him not showing up, that's not good for him either. It was the lesser of two evils. And it was probably a wise choice by the lawyers, because when it's Donald Trump on the witness stand, that can go nothing but fucking wrong. It's not good that he didn't testify, but it would have been a lot worse had he testified. So he was supposed to be the last witness. So hopefully we're getting close to the end of this thing and we'll get some results as far as what he's going to be made to pay for. Letitia James is asking for $250 million, which would probably be enough to break his ass. Plus a receivership. He can't run his companies. He would be kicked out of the state of New York for doing business. All of this is going to be devastating to Donald Trump because as a narcissist, this is how he identifies. Rich, powerful property, position. And when you take all that away, that's going to make him an entirely different person. And just that trial, losing that trial and paying all that money and losing all of his money may be one of the things that keep him from running in 2024. So this particular trial that's going to be ending here shortly may be the one that takes Donald Trump down long enough where these criminal trials will just be frosting on the cake. He'll be a shell of his former self, and he will be taken apart step by step. All right, we are going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen. Going to go to bed, try to get a little better, shower, shave, and be in a lot better situation tomorrow. We'll be back to normal, and I'm looking forward to that. But I hope you have a great day, and of course, we will talk to you tomorrow.